the invitation to speak today. So when Sylvia reached out to me about 3 weeks ago, I had absolutely no hesitation in saying yes, because I certainly have enjoyed my sessions with Rafiki. And if in any way I can contribute to someone else sustaining their business, why not? So Sylvia, thanks very much. So my purpose is to work with entrepreneurs and leaders to build sustainable businesses. My personal vision is to see businesses grow from vision to success. For me, it's not about the size, it's more about the impact that one can make through activating your vision. So this is what I do through my consultancy called StratAstute Consulting. After 20 years of receiving the proverbial monthly paycheck, I decided to stick my neck out in 2018 and move from some part-time consulting that I was doing into a full-time consultancy. And that was my start to entrepreneurship. I swore before that I would never, ever do this, and look where I find myself today. So I think we share a lot in common already. I'm sure you've taken a similar decision, and that's why we are in this Rafiki network together. So I'm not here to teach you anything or lecture anything. I literally am here to share my perspectives and my experiences, and I hope that makes a difference to you. But I'm also keen to hear stories about your journey as we go along. So if we can keep it interactive, fantastic. So we have gone through a very tough 2 years, and it's been tough more because there's absolutely no blueprint to deal with this risk that's landed called COVID-19. What's really been shown up is that our global systems are designed to deal with a few events as opposed to dealing with everybody, every single one of the 7 billion people in one go. So at the moment, we find ourselves leaderless, and as a human society, we are directionless. That means that we're all in the same boat. What you do with the situation, whether you survive or thrive after this phase has passed, is entirely up to you. So before we get into it, let us get onto the same page. Let me ask you this. When you think about your business, what is the one big thing that keeps you awake at night? You might want to share your comments in the chat box, or if you want to keep it personal, that's absolutely fine. You can do it in your space. And the second part to the question is, why is this such a big issue for you? i.e., what is the possible impact of this risk that you are thinking of or you're sitting with in your mind? So just some background on me. I started working in our family business at a young age. I recall when I was 6 years old, my mom and dad had to go to a family function in Johannesburg, and we had a shop. My dad was a specialist watch repairer, so we had a jewelry store come his watch repair center. And I realized that if they were going away for a week, that meant that our business was going to be closed for those days, and specifically over the weekend when it was quite busy on a Friday and Saturday. So I said to them, look, mom and dad, this is what I'm thinking. And of course, it was in a different language at that time. You go to this function. I've got some school matters to attend, but I'll speak to grandmom and granddad and run the shop whilst you are not here. So at least the customers can come and collect their watches, if nothing else, and we can get paid for it. They looked at me and said, okay. And off they went. And that was my first role as an acting entrepreneur or acting manager for the first time. At 8, I remember giving my first loan, and it was a situation you couldn't say no to. So my mother and my grandmother came and had a meeting with me. It was Diwali, which is a Hindu festival, and they wanted to show their best. So they wanted to go and buy a new dinner service for the guests. And they needed some money to fund this dinner service, which cost 45 Rand at the time. Can you believe it? They knew I had 38 Rand in my beautiful orange purse. So they negotiated. I decided, okay, I need some money here. And 10 Rand at the time meant that you had money. So I said, I'm going to keep 11 Rand and give you 27 Rand. And then when you pay me back, at least pay me 30 Rand, okay? And off they went. They were happy as Larry to buy their dinner service. And at the age of 8, I realized, with my mom and grand not working, it's impossible that they're ever going to pay me back. So in my mind, I wrote that loan off. and was happy with the 11 Rand that I had. But I just said yes to my first credit and liquidity risk. My family never ever compromised on education or food and nourishment, and definitely not on compromised on how we landed up presenting ourselves to the outer world. We were brought up feeling valued with abundant possibilities. Interestingly, my friends at school always thought that Roshni lived in a big white house with picket fences. I think they were watching a little bit too much of the soapy at the time called Dallas. The truth is this could not have been further from the truth. Our family lived in about a 70 square meter house, and there were 9 people living in it. So love, sport, very interesting conversations, healthy debates, and books were certainly all around us, but money wasn't. What we had were open hearts, inspired imagination, and discipline. Meal times in our homes always landed up being shop talk. And that's really why I said I will never, ever own my own business. And so I rebelled from the kitchen and even from food. My observation at the time, being a child and watching this play out, was that money and love were mutually exclusive and you could not have both. Why did I think that? Well, because when we were meant to be having breakfast, lunch, or supper and sharing stories that were connecting the family, we were talking about the business priorities and the issues in the business. I also recognized at the time the importance my parents placed on money as a proxy for self-worth to gain society's respect. And as a result, my subconscious mission became to change this legacy for my family and to build my own capability to be able to change the story. The one experience I want to share with you that still stands out with me in my mind, I was at university. I studied to become a chartered accountant. And after a tough but really enjoyable day, I came home and I walked into the shop, and the shop was adjacent to the house. So I decided, let me walk through the shop, say hi to Dad, and then go into the house. And my dad's gaze caught me as I walked in. I knew something was wrong. He said to me with some hesitation that the sheriff had come in to take mostly a lot of what we had in the house that day. And my heart sank, not at the situation, but I felt guilty. It cost 40 Rand for me to get to the university, just the fuel to get me to university that day. He'd taken in 10 Rand and had to buy some essentials for the house. It means he had a minus with him. At that point, I decided to stop all my passion, extramural activities at university and my socialization and really just knuckle down. I realized that this vision I had to change this family legacy was my vision, and therefore I had to take the ownership. I found some weekend work at a big retail store at the time called Edgar's, and that was a long journey that I really enjoyed. I also got some vacation jobs with accounting firms, which I was quite diligent at. And as a result of managing to secure those, I went to have a chat to the bank manager at the time with my dad and took the student loan over so that that would reduce his burden. And remember, at that time, the interest rates were 25%. What I had done at the time was I'd taken ownership. I took the risk because I knew that if I keep my head down, I would be reaping the rewards years later. And I did. So it is that context that I've shared with you that shaped who I am today, who I've become, and what I continue to become. Every bad experience that I had sharpened my focus, clarified my priorities, and it also forced me to take ownership. That in itself required me to dig very deep, because we all have a fear of failure or things not working out. With that background and the experience after I'd come back from university that day, I never want to know someone being in a position of a parent or breadwinner who has to share a similar story with their child. And the reality is that happens every day in our society, most certainly in the last 2 years. So it's interesting that a lot of my work today focuses on 3 sectors of society, which I believe shapes our socioeconomics, and that is healthcare, education, and wealth creation. And right now, leadership is focusing on exactly those 3 things. Then in 2008, fast forward into my career now, I was given my dream job. I was given the opportunity to establish and head up an investor relations function for a South African-based pharmaceutical company who you may have heard of, Aspen Pharmacare. 2 weeks after I arrived to start this job, little did I know that the company was starting a series of acquisitions and international diversification. So they started buying business products from GSK, Merck, Eli Lilly, and Pfizer. And within a space of 9 months, we'd gone from 1 country to 160 countries around the world. And during this time, I had to develop and shape this investor relations strategy, build investors' trust so that they'd invest in our company. And I had no idea about investor relations, how to do it, about corporate communications, by dealing with these big bankers, and about keeping shareholders happy. But I was fortunate in that the CEO, Stephen Sard, and the deputy CEO saw something in me that I hadn't even recognized. And because of that, my context in a professional capacity was globalized literally overnight. My sole responsibility to show up for this opportunity was to step up, to make it happen, to deliver in accordance with the business purpose, and that was to supply quality, affordable healthcare across our world. In June of 2008, you all know that the financial crisis had happened then. As a result of my dealings with the asset managers and the investors, I started getting calls almost on a daily basis from asset managers and analysts who worked at top companies, JP Morgan State, Morgan Stanley, the Thomson Reuters guys, who said to me, Roshni, we've just given you a courtesy call to say that I won't be around tomorrow. I've been given X hours to pack up my stuff and leave. I'm being retrenched or I've been laid off. That made me realize that this thing we call wealth is fluid. These guys were earning top salaries. They didn't have to worry a day in their life about financial security, and it was taken away from them overnight. More that they were not given the dignity to even be forewarned about this. They were literally given a few hours to pack their things up and figure out where their life was going to go to. Wealth is fluid. How much is enough? And my question at the time was, can anyone really have full control over the sustainability of their wealth? So this context shaped my investor relations strategy, and I became quite passionate about this principle called responsible investment. And this is today what I help my clients with when we're looking at investing their money or growing their wealth over a long period of time. Then one day, a really interesting thing happened. My CEO and I were having a casual chat, and he asked me what was on my priority list for the day. And I explained to him that I was preparing the risk report for the board. He asked me what my biggest risk was. And spontaneously, I didn't even process what I was saying. I said, the biggest risk we have is that people start taking ownership for their health, and that reduces the need for them to buy our medication as regularly as they do at the moment. That was my first understanding and articulation of this principle now that we call sustainability or sustainable business strategies. I realized that no business model can actually last forever. Why? Well, because humans and human life is constantly evolving. And this is why sustainable strategy and business strategy are a core part of what I do today. I found myself speaking to my current banker 2 years ago, and she was sharing with me quite a personal story about her child who has a specific condition, and very worried as a mother about the child's future. And what I shared with Jackie was, I said, Jackie, what comes to mind is what I've just read. It says, your karma influences your dharma. And what is that that's saying? It says, you become who you are because of your struggles, as a result of your struggles. So I'm going to pose a question to you now. If you think of an event in your own journey, in your own life, that triggered you, that shaped you, what was your response and reaction at the time? And how did you find the resources and the courage to get through it? And if you apply that to that first question I asked of what is keeping you awake at night, are there any similarities between the two situations? And how can you draw from that experience to try and make your decision that you need to make right now? So what does resilience mean? To me, when I think about resilience, I think it's the ability to bounce back from a setback, or dare I say it, from a failure. You know, from my perspective, resilience is only developed through experience. I really believe that those who live a life of inaction or indecision are never really going to build resilience. But what they rather do is quicken their irrelevance or their obsolescence, because it's the experiences and our ability to navigate those experiences that shape us and enable us to face whatever it is that's going to be coming to us in the future. And if I can use some parallels to sport, business, and life. So in sport, I think we all watch some tennis. Federer, Nadal, Novak Djokovic, those guys are known as the big three. Why? They have each won 20 Grand Slams. In total, they've won 60 Grand Slams collectively out of 83 in the last 18 years. And that sounds really admirable and absolutely remarkable. And we call these guys legends, and they are. But in a game of tennis, it's binary, right? You've got one winner and one loser, one title winner and one who is not. And you must understand that professional sport is a business. Their earnings depend on their performance, and their differentiator, their variables are their match fitness, their techniques, and their ability to read the proverbial shot, read their opponent, manage the risks, i.e. facing them. So if you are losing a French Open, you've got a very short time to bounce back from that and go to Wimbledon and try and win Wimbledon, to try and claw back from your previous losses. And so the cycle of continuous improvement and resilience carries on. Let's take a business example. Between Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, Richard Branson, who can we think of? Mukesh Ambani from Resilience, Warren Buffett. Who is the wealthiest of them all? Do these guys maybe stand up in front of the mirror every morning and ask themselves, am I the wealthiest person? How did I get here? You know, there's no such thing. I mean, their wealth is built largely on the share price or their equity portfolios, and that's determined by how well their stakeholders, including you or I, support their business models. But what they have done is over a period of 10, 20, 30, or even longer years, they have been committed, put hard work and effort, and had the courage to think big about these big business visions they have. And so they are perhaps where they are. If we take a life example, I can think of leaders like Mahatma Gandhi, Nelson Mandela, Mother Teresa, Malala Yousafzai. South Africa, we're all hearing about the amazing story of Imtiaz Sooliman, who works for Gift of the Givers. Despite these odds, these amazing people have dedicated their service to social rights and to equality. Were they afraid? Absolutely. Did they put their necks on the line? Absolutely. They made tremendous sacrifices in their personal life, in their own visions and ambitions to do what is right for humanity. Why? It's because this is a purpose that they found within themselves, and that's what wakes them up every morning and show up despite the challenges that they face in their personal lives. So for me, the COVID-19 crisis has been a great equalizer. It really has given us all an opportunity to reset. And if you look at the guidelines that have been given out around hygiene, around health protocols, around business recovery programs, it's forcing us to go back to the basics, to firm up our foundation. And if we don't do this objectively and mindfully and with a future focused vision, then the pivot strategies that we want to implement are going to be quite wobbly. So it's very, very important that you know where your business is going to and then go, as opposed to going and hoping that the business plan figures itself out. I think on the good news is that I found that humans by nature are resilient. If I think back to the evolution of human beings, I mean, our ancestors at one point used to have to hunt for food, so they weren't sure where their next meal is going to come from. Adventurers had to explore and sail over really treacherous oceans to try and discover new continents, for example, else Africa and the Americas would not be here. Our grandparents went through wars, been in the Spanish flu, maybe even experienced the Depression. You yourselves have gone through ups and downs in your personal life and in your career. And you somehow bounce back from it. The fact that we're here having this conversation today means that we're okay. So if resilience is in our DNA, then perhaps it's about us needing to dig deep and believing in ourselves enough as business owners and leaders in our own spaces to find that reset button, to find that resilience button, and really just believe that if we commit to applying it, maybe things won't work out as badly as we think. So there is, from the work I've done and the experiences that I've had, there is no magic formula. But what is available to you is what you have right now and what you choose to do with it. I always use a really amazing proverb that says a person with too much ambition cannot sleep in peace. So we use very technical terms like risk management and, etc. But it's about just pausing to say, hang on, where am I at? And yes, we have big visions in mind and we want to achieve things and transform people around us. But it's as important to focus on the stepping stones, because as we focus on walking across each stepping stone, we'll eventually get to that big vision. Remember those names that I just mentioned, the big entrepreneurs, the sporting athletes, the humanitarians. It was after years that I actually got to where they wanted to. So Sylvia has asked me to share with you some tips. And like I say, there's no magic bullet to this. Each person has to find their own balance. But I'm going to try and share 5 maybe tips on the business side and then on the leadership personal side. Starting on the business resilience. Number 1, what I say to my clients is stay in love with your purpose. And at 8 a.m. or whenever you start work every morning, activate that purpose. I.e., when you show up for work, you're not going to put in a day's work or go to meetings or answer phone calls. You are there to make that big vision happen. What is that vision? And keep it alive, enliven it every day and every morning. If you've got employees working with you, energize that vision through your conversation or coffee chats, or these days, virtual coffee chats every single day, and keep that vision alive. If you know where you are going to, and if that destination still excites you, then you will find the resilience and the resources within to get you there. Of course, there will be a few hurdles, but it will be easier to navigate those hurdles and those fears. Number 2, have a game plan, set goals, but also be adaptable. So your business environment, even your personal life, changes constantly. And yes, we have a vision. Yes, we have goals and we have a game plan to manage, but we've also got to be responsive to what happens in our environment around us. So make sure that if you are prioritizing your time, that your diary and your goals are very closely aligned, so that you start prioritizing those things that are important to where you're trying to get to. If you do that, then the right information, the right people, the right business decisions, the right actions, and the right level of accountability will start coming together. And you're going to start seeing that each of these stepping stones is starting to build something. Number three, look, financial sustainability is absolutely key, specifically in the time that we are in at the moment. So my advice is measure your return on investment. It sounds like a very high technical term, but if I can make it practical for you, you need money to eat and to meet your basic needs. So don't get so nervous with cash outflow. The nature of money is for it to circulate. That's money's job. You need cash outflow as much as you need cash inflow. So if you can maybe but classify your outflows, let's call it that, as expenses and investments. So investments are going to be those things that you are going to put money down for now that are going to reap benefits in the long term, like the decisions I made quite earlier on in my life and subconsciously, of course. Expenses, some expenses have to happen because you have daily needs to meet in your business and your personal life. So try and keep your fixed expenses as low as possible. Where you have discretion over expenses, try and see where those expenses can become investments, i.e. where those investments can add value. And remember that it doesn't always have to be money for money. So it's not like I'm making this expense now because it's going to bring me a client tomorrow. Sometimes you make expenses because they actually energize you and fuel your passion and motivate the people who work in your teams. And those expenses are equally important. Number 4, I find that creativity needs a blank canvas. The new normal is requiring us to come up with new solutions. Yes, you can look back on your experiences and how that could help you now. But in order to step into a new future that's going to take us to 2030 and beyond, we are going to need to operate differently. And you're already seeing the world of business having changed. The very fact that we're having this meeting digitally, as opposed to coming into a room in Johannesburg somewhere, has simply changed the fact that everyone can access this platform, irrespective of time zones, flight costs, all the rest of it. And that's really fantastic. On this basis, super important that you make enough time to work on your business, i.e. take a bird's eye view, get that helicopter view of what's actually going around in your business and around it, and what influences the way the business is performing towards your bigger goal, and also in your business. And I think that you're all possibly doing very, very well, but you need to get the balance right. So I think that the takeaway there is you must invest in free thinking time. For me, sitting in front of a laptop is my doing time. I'm doing the work. I'm working in my business. If I have to work on strategies for myself and my clients, and even in my personal space, then I would take a walk or go and do some exercise or take a drive or just take a break, because your neural pathways in your brain need to work a little bit differently. Number 5 on the business front, people are long-term assets. I always say a business is literally a piece of paper or a website. What you need to make it real is people. People buy your products, people give customer service, and without people, the business actually has no life of its own. So as you are building your business, some of you are thinking about starting a business, super important that you build your ecosystem of stakeholders who are going to be with you now, tomorrow, and into the future, because all businesses go through cycles. That's the nature of business. You know, they say there's a proverb that says, for tomorrow belongs to the people who prepare for it today. So you've got to take your stakeholders and your ecosystem on this journey with you. And that means building trust. And that means being quite transparent and open about where's your vision, what's working, what's not working, and lift people around you as your business rises. So just to recap on the business side, 5 points: stay in love with your purpose and activate it every day. Have a game plan, set goals, but be adaptable. Number 3, measure your return on investment. or in this case, the example I gave you, return on expenses. Creativity needs a blank canvas. And number 5, people are long-term assets. So on the personal side, on the leadership and resilience side, number 1, I like to think of myself as an endurance athlete, being an entrepreneur rather than a sprinter. This is a long-term game. You know, some of my clients, for example, take 18 months to convert from first discussion to when they actually sign the contract. Many of them don't even sign the contract after all that. But my vision is that one day, you know, the synergies will meet and we will do some work together. In a personal capacity, stay focused on becoming your best self. You only have 100% to give. So you're saying to me that you are giving 100% to your business, and like I always used to say, I'm giving 150% to my work. That is unsustainable, right? Because you have to be sustainable yourself in order for your business to be sustainable. Why am I saying this? Have a routine that works for you. Make time for things that are personally energizing and uplifting for you. Also make time for things that keep you balanced and grounded as a human being. So number 1, be an endurance athlete, not a sprinter. Number 2, develop and diversify your support system. You are going to need, as an entrepreneur, a very close-knit support system in your personal space that is going to help you shield the headwinds of entrepreneurship. Okay, so lean on people who have your back, who you can be authentic and vulnerable with. But in the same vein, don't get so focused on your own requirements and support requirements that you don't have their back too, right? Especially in this time where we're in, you've got to be there for other people. Also important, when I talk about diversifying your support system, very important to invite challengers into your support base, i.e. those who will constructively criticize you and almost shift you into being your best self. So invite those people into those spaces. Number 3, do a lot more of what you're naturally good at. Let's take the analogy of sport, right? You look at top golfers, if you look at top tennis players or other sports stars, they are doing what their natural talent instructs them to do. You're not going to get a Rafael Nadal, for example, going to play the US Open golf tournament. That's not his A game, right? So do a lot more of what you're naturally good at. Apply commitment, discipline, and consistency to it, because if you do anything else, that's simply going to be flicking channels, as I call it. Number 4, perfection feeds procrastination. We all fear criticism. We don't want to fail. Failing costs money, failing loses respect, etc. So we believe. But entrepreneurship at heart is about taking risks. And if you don't take risks in your business or in your personal life, there's absolutely no growth. And that is unsustainable. Please make decisions and believe in yourself enough to know that even if those decisions are wrong, you will bounce back from them. You must also mind your habits, right? So if your habits are feeding the procrastination, change those thought patterns in your mind. You have to have the courage to be proven wrong. And you've got to have the humility to accept that experience is part of life. Number 5, I alluded to it earlier, watch your mind talk. You have to be your best cheerleader. You also have to be your best advisor. So the difference is, for me, when you've experienced something, it's something that has really happened. You can learn from it. When you are fearing something, it's something that you are concerned that will happen. It hasn't even happened yet. So you're investing so much time and energy into this mind talk that is steering you away from being your true best self. So please just become more aware of this. So I'm at the end of my talk now. We go back to the beginning. After what I have shared, and it's only my perspective and my experience, how do you feel now about that one thing that keeps you awake at night? And what fresh perspectives do you possibly now have to help you see that situation differently? So I'll leave it there. I really want to thank you for listening to me today, and Sylvia for inviting me. If you want to check out our details, you can go on www.stratastute.co.za. It's StratAstute. We do give 30-minute free consultations. Sometimes it's more just to get to understand your business and your problems a bit better so that we can see if we can help you. And if you found this session useful, and if enough of you do, then I have no hesitation in chatting to Sylvia to see how we could support your growth business. Because like I said, that is my passion. I want to see your businesses grow and shine. You can also find me on LinkedIn if you want to connect with me there. I am a one-on-one person, so I prefer one-on-one chats as opposed to group chats. Yeah, and we can take it there. Thanks, Sylvia.